Hey everyone, and welcome. Today, we're diving deep into the first epistle to Timothy. We're going to unpack its context and its powerful message, all based on the fantastic teachings of Vijay Nadella. So let's get right into it. Right off the bat, let's start with the central question this entire letter is trying to answer. How on earth can a young leader guide a church that's spiraling into chaos? Now, this isn't just some theoretical problem. It was the very real situation facing a young man named Timothy. So, to understand the answer, we've got to meet the key players. You've got the author, the Apostle Paul, a total pillar of the Christian faith. He's writing to his young apprentice, Timothy. And where is Timothy? He's in Ephesus, a huge, influential, and very, very complicated city. Now, what's really fascinating here is the timing. Paul had planted this church nearly a decade earlier, but now, all these years later, he's hearing that things are starting to go off the rails. So he writes this urgent letter, probably while he's in Macedonia, to give Timothy the tools he needs to set things right. To really grasp the weight of this letter, we have to understand this city. Ephesus wasn't some quiet, sleepy village. It was a bustling, urban powerhouse, and Timothy was facing a pretty intense mix of cultural forces. I mean, just picture it. Ephesus was a major hub for trade and home to the gigantic temple of Artemis, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Magic arts and sorcery were everywhere. Socially, women held a surprising amount of influence, and pagan temple practices, including prostitution, were deeply woven into the fabric of the culture. It was this diverse, cosmopolitan world where this brand new Christian church was fighting to survive. You know, to give us a sense of scale, Vijay Nadella makes this brilliant comparison to a modern metropolis like Mumbai. Think about the cultural pressures, the mix of different ideas, the economic power. That was Ephesus. And this is the environment Timothy had to lead in. And here's the kicker. This cultural pressure wasn't just staying outside the church walls. False teachers were popping up from inside the church, creating this toxic blend of pagan ideas and Christian doctrine. They were twisting the truth, often for money or respect, and creating massive confusion among the believers. So how do you combat that? When everyone claims to be a teacher, who gets the final say? Paul's answer is crystal clear: apostolic authority. This was the ultimate weapon against the chaos of false teaching. So what exactly is apostolic authority? Well, it was the unique, God-given right that the original apostles had to establish the foundational truths of the church. Their teaching wasn't just their opinion. It was seen as the direct word of God, often confirmed by miraculous signs that proved they were sent by him. And this authority, it wasn't transferable, it was unique to them. The teaching gives us a fantastic analogy for this. Think of apostolic authority like an official seal on a document, or maybe like an ISO certification on a product. It was the stamp that said, this is authentic, this comes from God. Anyone teaching something different was, by definition, unofficial and unapproved. So this created a really stark contrast. On one side, you had the apostolic doctrine, God-approved, confirmed by signs, and the very foundation of what would become the New Testament. On the other side, you had these false teachings, man-made, driven by selfish motives, and twisting the truth. Paul had to draw a very clear line in the sand. But Paul didn't just write to condemn the false teachers. He offered a positive vision, a constructive plan. His letter is essentially a blueprint for how a healthy church is supposed to function, bringing divine order to human chaos. This letter really had 3 main goals. First, to empower Timothy to boldly confront the false teachers. Second, to establish clear guidelines for everything from worship to social conduct. And third, and this is absolutely crucial, to define the qualifications for what it takes to be a leader in the church. And Paul gets incredibly specific. I mean, just look at these qualifications from chapter 3. An overseer, a role also called an elder or pastor, had to be above reproach, self-controlled, and, critically, able to teach sound doctrine. For deacons, they had to be worthy of respect, sincere, and not motivated by money. These weren't suggestions, they were the standard. Ultimately, this letter served as Timothy's credentials. Remember, he's a young guy facing older, more established, but deeply flawed teachers. This letter was Paul putting his official, God-given authority right behind Timothy, basically telling the whole church, listen to him, he speaks for me, and I speak for God. Okay, so that's the historical situation, but why does this ancient letter matter to us today?
Well, the takeaway from First Timothy is perhaps more relevant now than ever before.
And here it is, the single most important lesson from this entire analysis. Context is the key. To understand the instructions in this letter, or in any part of the Bible for that matter, we absolutely have to understand the specific problems and the cultural situation it was written into. Without context, we're bound to misread and misapply its teachings. So, how do we apply this? It means we always have to ask why an instruction was given. It helps us separate a timeless principle for all believers from what might have been a specific cultural command for first-century Ephesus. It helps us spot modern false teachings. And most importantly, it helps us evaluate our own church practices against that original apostolic foundation. And that leaves us with a challenging final question to chew on. As we look at our own churches today, with all of our traditions and practices, how well do they really align with the blueprint laid down by the apostles? It's a question worth asking, and 1 Timothy gives us the framework to start finding the answer.